The following video is part of my reconstruction project. That is, I have been going through old footage filmed quite a while ago and attempting to recompile it into something kind of usable, in advance of updating the channel format slightly to be a little more efficient, a little less time-consuming, and a little more interesting. Mainly to be a little more fun and to be actually achievable rather than long, boring videos where I start a project that sounds cool and then it doesn't work and I declare it a success. So, I don't know what's in this video because I'm making this announcement in advance of going through all that way old material footage. Note that the quality is not great because I keep breaking cameras. I have like 3 or 4 and I haven't figured out one that works yet. Hopefully I'll figure that out in the future.
But probably not.
Synchronize. Well, I know for a fact that the audio is louder, if not better, because I've adjusted the camera. It's a new camera, different camera. It's actually my cell phone, stuck precariously between 2 bolts pointed at me. It also is slightly unbalanced, and there goes the furnace, because it's snowing outside, so there will be a lot of interference. But, interestingly, the sound of white noise keeps me concentrated. What is in front of me? Well, part of it has to do with the furnace. This is a long story. I'm going to do it in like 4 sentences. Nosebleeds. I have a constant problem with nosebleeds. Not for the reason you're thinking of. The reason I have nosebleeds is because it is very dry outside. It's very dry inside as a consequence. I need a humidifier. I could go to the store and buy a humidifier. That would fix the problem. But that's boring. So I decided to try to create a passive one based on the concept of diffusing liquid through a medium. And you say, well, what medium? If you're observant, you've already figured out the medium. Concrete. Gritty. Concrete is the medium. Why concrete? Concrete, especially the sifted concrete, this is a remnant of some I made earlier, is porous. It doesn't look like it, but this is actually a sponge on a molecular level. And if you were to put this in water, it will absorb water and contain it within its matrix over time and slowly dissipate it. The concrete dries and water can flow. It's very slow. I'd like to create a more porous concrete that allows water to flow faster. I thought, well, how do I do that? And if you're observant, you've already figured out the answer. It is this. Hydrogels. Hydrogels are substances which absorb water and expand vastly. As you can see, I have some already out. I made way too much. It's very jiggly. And it don't smell so good neither. That is a 1/4 cup of this powder. It looks like a powder. It's that. It's that much of which I have applied water and it has expanded vastly. Unfortunately, there's way too much in this. Now, what exactly is it made of? I have no idea. It's made in China and it smells funny. So, it should be non-toxic, right? Some hydrogels are actually extremely toxic. It is a substance which absorbs liquid. Usually they're derived from a polysaccharide. Nowadays, they're derived from a polysaccharide or a protein. Like gelatin can accomplish the same thing. Mucus of some sort. It's basically, it feels like mucus. It's compressed mucus. So the idea is if I add this to concrete, then the concrete will have this in it as little bubbles, which this can then be, I guess, melted or burned out, or it can just stay there if it really needs to, which creates larger pores, because this has like a granular appearance. So, in order, before I build distracted. That doesn't smell good either. Before I build the full assembly, because I have an idea of what it should look like in my head, a vision. Interestingly, each of these contains just enough sifted concrete to fill one of these red Solo cups that I had in my closet. Since I'm not going to drink anything out of them, I'm going to use them for an experiment. The first one, is going to get just concrete. Fill it up, and then I'm going to insert one of these. These are like Keurig cups. It's going to go in the middle to create a void, so that I can fill that with water and then measure how fast the water leaves. Number 2 is going to get an amount of powder, which will probably inflate in the concrete, possibly dramatically. But it may not, or may do so more slowly. 3 is going to get the pre-inflated mass mixed in with the concrete as an aggregate to replace the rocks. Since it's not a real aggregate, it doesn't have tensile strength like a rock does. It won't increase the strength of the concrete. It'll increase its porosity and the speed of which water flows through it. My furnace stopped. Okay, so remind me not to trip over this. So this one originally contained sonics. It's from reorganizing my electronics. I have yep, that's water. I need some sort of a stirring poker. Stirring poker? If this works, we may take advantage of later, is the fact that concrete doesn't stick very well to plastic surfaces. Mixture removes most of the air bubbles. These have a hole in them because they're used. A Keurig is an injector system that has 2 points. That is an advantage in this case because if I were to just put in that's also now a problem. So I have added water to it, which changes the buoyancy so that it will sink, hopefully. Probably should have filled the hole before I put it in. Otherwise, it's just because that cup's going to have to come out, which will probably be within a couple hours while the concrete's still wet. Just give it a twist and pull, hopefully. Oh well, in too deep to change now. This one was semiconductors and relays. This one is going to receive the dried powder. How much? Well, that was way too much. That was a quarter of a cup. This is a quarter of a cup, so I say 1 heaping spoonful. Doesn't seem like a lot, but remember that's a lot over there. Oh, that's a nice sound. It looks cool too. Hard to see, but unless I hold it level, it looks like a pile of stirred concrete. So, if I pour water into this, it might expand. It may require more water because it'll, well, the concrete is absorbing water used chemically to harden, but the hydrogel is also absorbing water because it's expanding in the concrete. That expands at such a speed, I can demonstrate that actually. I'm going to put most of this back in because I'll save it for later. So you can see that's just residue in the jar, basically. There's a little bit moving around in there, but not much. There's no water in there after I poured that in. That is the goo. It expanded drastically from being just a residue. So it does it relatively quickly. Now, how that changes the mechanical properties of the concrete, I'm not sure. Because right now the concrete is chunky. It looks kind of like a concrete should be basically a liquid, right? It doesn't really look like a liquid until I've added quite a bit of water. At which point, if I look at it, I can see a weird kind of texture where the hydrogel is sitting mixed with it. And it feels simultaneously gooier and more crumbly. Like, and it's light. Like it's not doughy, it's not sticky. It's just, like the world's worst cookie dough. The hydrogel seems to add viscosity. But not... How do you describe it? It's more viscous? No, it's less viscous. It's gooier and clumpier, but not as sticky. Like, it's... You'd look at this and you'd think, oh, that's going to be like dough, right? It doesn't feel like dough. It feels like I'm stirring gritty snot. Which I guess is technically what it is. Insert the cup. Ooh. Interestingly, as much as I claim the viscosity is not lower, that cup didn't need water to weigh it down. It just sat there. So it's like fine in there. I will give it water just to make sure it stays balanced. The last one, which is an unlabeled box, same amount of concrete in there, extra powder if I need it. I'm going to put in a lot more of the pre-moistened hydrogel first, including all of this. As you can see, that was residue, and it is no longer residue. It's now clumped up. And as big as that is, a much larger volume of this is in there. Then I'm going to throw in a pretty good sized amount of this stuff. Much less satisfying to turn over in there. But interestingly, it has resulted in a powdery appearance because the concrete particles are now adhering to this stuff. A little more, I think. Don't know how that'll affect the concrete, because that might cause the concrete to begin to form these globules within itself. Well, the globules will probably break down as soon as I add water. Yeah, it looks very similar to what the other one looked like. And I imagine this will probably be somewhat similar, although I didn't do a concentration grade. Oh, this clearly already looks different. It's like hairy goo. It needs more water. Much liquidier, more liquidy. Just hang out for a while, I guess. Need to pour some off, actually. And the other thing that will be... Okay, so that's repelling... It's not nearly as viscous as the other one. It's repelling the cup. Let me weigh the cup down to be about water density. So the two issues we're going to see is, one, does this affect the structural integrity of the concrete? If I pull, I'm going to cut those cups off when this is done, and there should be a block of concrete. If it's structurally poor, when I grab that block, I squeeze it, it'll just disintegrate. And that's not what I need right now. It may be a good filling material, but it'll need additional engineering steps to make sure that it isn't the core of the concrete, or the shell of the concrete. It can be the core, but it can't be the shell. Two, density issues. This stuff, I think, is less dense than water. It's definitely less dense than concrete. In those cups right now, it may be flowing so that the bottom will be one thing and the top will be another thing. I can still use that if it's structurally sound, but again, there's different considerations for it. So I will let those sit, probably until next week. I don't know how long it'll take this stuff to harden, and then we'll see what it looks like, hopefully. Well, I'm back and not wearing any shoes, so let's see how these actually hardened. The goal here is to try to determine structural integrity of the mass. Moisture parameters don't matter right now. What matters is, do they actually come out of these cups okay? I did have the spare concrete looks okay. Feels real weird, like the top is squishy, but it's solidified, so let's see if we did the same in the cups. We'll start with regular sifted concrete. I think the best way to get this out, because you're not going to be able to just pour that out. I'm going to have to cut the cup. Okay, weirdly cutting the cup is hard. I need snippy snips. Then just peel it. A cup of concrete. You can actually see the gradient that it's dried here, but it's still actively drying here because that was sealed in by the plastic. So this is what sifted concrete looks like when it's just allowed to harden, and it's actually somewhat pretty. It came out very smooth because the cup was around it. The pores there are a result of air bubbles that were in the mixture that were entombed. It's probably like that throughout it. There's also a hole in the top from where one of these was. Okay, up next, we have the one where it was dried hydrogel added. This one's a little more full. Structurally, the cup's strongest portion is the rim. The rest is very flimsy. So once you cut the rim, it's just a question of peeling. Okay, this is a little bit different. You can see the bottom has some issues in that there were a lot more air bubbles. The bottom is not structurally sound at this point. Overall, the whole thing is not nearly as dry. That's because the hydrogel is holding in water. It hasn't had a chance to dry like that one has. There is inside it, it's hard to see, I can feel it. There's little squishies that kind of stick out of the walls. So if I give that a squeeze, I can kind of pull it apart a little. But overall, the thing is pretty solid, and I think once it dries, this part will get much more solid. Now this is the one that this was from, which was pre-moistened hydrogel added to the concretes. This one is the question because that was not very good quality concrete. There's a lot more hydrogel in it, I think, than there is in this one, and I think the density effect might be greater. Although technically it should be the same in there. But it does hydrate from that's weak old water. It tastes like this room. Well, that is interesting. I had low hopes for this one maintaining structural integrity as it was forming. And although it feels soft, the softness I think is just, it has so much hydrogel that I'm touching hydrogel and that feels squishy, versus the actual concrete, which you can see looks like a red Solo cup and is full of numerous voids. That actually came out pretty nice. So what I want to do is, before these are fully allowed to dry, what I want to do is I want to pour that water into their holes and then check back, maybe an hour, 24 hours, however long it takes, to see where the water goes. For all I know, it's going to happen instantaneously. Fortunately, I have some water right here. Fill them up. So the idea, recall, of the humidity system is to have the concrete in a state like this, that the concrete is perpetually wet and degassing water. So I'd like to see which one of these the water can enter and permeate through fastest. So now I have to wait. Well, it's been about an hour, so interestingly, these were all full originally to their rim. Solid concrete has already lost about half of its water. Concrete with dry hydrogel has lost some of its water, maintaining structural integrity. Concrete with wet hydrogel has lost almost as much of its water as regular concrete over here, but has developed this unpleasant slime, very slippery, on top of it, which appears to be made out of most of the hydrogel, as if it all floated to the surface. And clearly not all of it did, but a large portion of it seems to have floated to the surface, which kind of indicates, conversely, despite having all this extra material, the standard sifted concrete might be the more porous option. Well, now, my closet behind me is open, and I don't like that at all. But you can't see it, so it doesn't really matter, so it never happened. It's time to build the actual thing. Hopefully. So the tests with the things did the thing, now thing for the thing, and then I'll thing. So, first thing of the thing. The wax. Oh, waxy. I rubbed wax on the inside of this. Now, we already established the fact that I can pull this out indicates that concrete generally doesn't really stick to plastic. It also did that with those when I took those out, the cups. However, just to be 100% sure we don't have stickiness with a larger piece, I greased it up. I didn't rub the wax off, I just left it where it is because it doesn't really matter. I actually spent a considerable amount of time in college making large molds. And it used a similar procedure, just huge. I have decided that comparing all of these, as gross as this one looks versus the sifted concrete, that one's actually much lighter. I'm going to do this one, which is hydrogel, because I have all of this hydrogel. Who even knows what this is made of? I don't know. I'm going to use hydrogel dry combined with sifted concrete to produce the final product. 1 red cup to 1 big spoon. I don't know what size spoon, don't know what size cup. It's not good to breathe this dust, so don't. Luckily, since you're insulated by a camera. 1, 2, 3. You don't have to. Now that doesn't look like a lot, but remember, we established this stuff expands probably 5 or 6 times its volume easily. Add water. Interestingly, this is bathroom water from the bathroom sink. It tastes very different from kitchen water from the kitchen sink. Now, one observation is that messed up bottom versus that is because this stuff was comparatively chunkier. It should ideally be gooey. Like right now, it looks like cake that has oil added to it but no eggs. Interestingly, and this will be a minority opinion here, this is one of my hot takes. Not my hot cakes, those are delicious. They're not. I'm terrible at baking most of the time because I put Epsom salts in everything. Eggs are not necessary in the vast majority of baking processes. Cakes, probably, but cookies, no. You don't need eggs in cookies. Eggs provide protein that allows a baked good to rise and stay stable when it's well risen. But, like, you don't need that in cookies. And to be honest, you don't even need that most of the time. Like, in bread doesn't stay up because of eggs. There's not generally eggs in bread. Bread stays up because it's gluten. In other words, eggs are largely unnecessary in baking. It's a conspiracy by Big Egg to put eggs in literally everything, even though they're unnecessary. You don't need that out right now. Again, part of the reason for its lack of consistency is that it absorbs the water and becomes much too chunky. So I'm going to add a little bit extra just to percolate in there and shake it. Part of the advantage provided by having a clear container is that you can see the walls. So the chance of getting air pockets like that is smaller. Very heavy block of concrete. Right now it's just a block. In order to make it capable of diffusing water, we have to ruin it. So I have these, which you probably already noticed. They are milk jugs with broken screws. Now, I did not cut the ends off the screws for this. I had cut the screws ends off previously to make short screws. These will be buried into the top layer of the material. Well, okay, no idea if this will actually work, but the idea is that those are sunk into the concrete. The screws get surrounded by concrete and it holds, so that once it hardens, it'll be impossible to remove these jugs. These jugs should also be sealed relatively well around the edges. Not 100%, but almost that way. So that when I fill them up with water, that water will be in contact with the porous concrete and be able to diffuse outward through it. It looks ugly, but it should generate humidity. Now, one part of the issue is that a lot of the hydrogel has floated to the top, but I've already established that second best to this is this, which is no hydrogel. So it doesn't matter how much of the hydrogel leaves, I'm fine with it departing if it wants to, because it'll be fine. It just needs to harden enough for these to be stuck, and they're already starting to stick. So I just have to wait on that now for probably another week, and it should become stable. Hopefully. Well, some unfortunate news with this project. When I tried to take the object out of the container, I had a bit of a friability issue and the whole thing shattered. So this project is a total failure, I guess. I mean, these, as bulk, I mean, they hold together relatively well, but they can't maintain thin walls. So the thin areas around the milk jug just couldn't sustain themselves and it fell apart. So this isn't going to work. But I'm not a quitter most of the time. And looking at these and sitting, thinking, it came to my attention that they look an awful lot like rocks. Very dusty rocks. So I'm thinking to myself, well, sure, they're falling apart, but I may still be able to use them for something. So bear with me for a second. First, I'm going to take all the ones that are of reasonably good size, and I'm going to separate those out. What I'm going to do with those is wash them, try to get the dust off them, and then cook them, and try to re-solidify them to get the water back out, to prep them up. There were bigger bulk pieces. I mean, they're still friable, but they're more durable. Especially as you get to larger pieces, and the complete bulk of it, like that was basically the bottom, the inside of what would have been a milk jug. And that, I can't break that with my hand. It's got too much bulk strength, which material-wise makes sense. These little spheres, these voids of squishy that are in the concrete, when you only have a little concrete and it's a lot squishy, that's not a lot of concrete holding any two planes together. A little piece and it just turns to dust. And any concrete will do that. Even, like this is basically whole solid concrete here. I can turn it to dust. But a bigger fragment has a lot more pieces holding it together. Also, I think it cured better. But big pieces, unfortunately, don't really align with what I want to do. So let me break it. Because why not? I'm breaking things anyway. Let me see if I can break this big, kind of ugly looking brick into more sizable portions with a hammer. Now, regular hammer isn't going to do much. You have to concentrate the force. Well, that's completely unexpected. Apparently, this stuff is at such a material where you can just nail into it. And it, nails like wood, basically. So that's unexpected. My nail is stuck. Interesting discovery, I guess. Well, okay, the interesting aspect of this is that not only has it made the concrete friable on the small scale, but has rendered it oddly elastic. Meaning that it's basically like heavy wood, and you can nail things into it. I could probably even drill it. So I'm going to set that piece aside, and I'm just going to sort through these smaller pieces to try to get what I'm looking for. And then I will be back with the ones that have been correctly assigned and purified for my purposes and dried out. That'll take me about an hour. I don't think you want to see me going through small chunks of debris, trying to find which ones I can... So I can break most of these, but I can't break that? It's like, I can just pick up any of this and just... Oh, I can't break that either. Okay, there's more in here than I thought. My camera is basically held up by a small rock and a screw that doesn't plug into anything. Okay, but we're doing this. So I washed these things. They're now little chunks of moon rock looking things. Pretty nice. You know, some flat surfaces, but otherwise it looks very much like a rock. Very absorbent. So now what I'm going to do is align them and hot glue them back together. Not into the original shape, into a column. So now it's just like playing a jigsaw puzzle. That fits against that, which is fine. That one kind of fits there. The idea to leave a hollow in the middle, with the assumption that water can then be pumped up through the middle and cascade down like a waterfall. This is similar, conceptually, to a much larger version of how my paludarium functioned. I see it's still running. It'll be in the update video. I can put in a picture of it right now. It's on my desk. So I'm going to sit here and hot glue these together into a shape. Well, okay, I've hot glued it into a shape. Didn't use all the pieces, but used a lot of them. It's a little crumbly, but pretty much overall durable. And there's a hole in the middle. Now, it needs to be finished. And what do I mean by finished? Well, I say if I'm going to make a fountain, this thing needs a biofilm. In the same way that the paludarium uses, except the paludarium has carbon as the main ingredient, in addition to the concrete, which provides a place that life eventually did adhere to. In this case, I need this to percolate in organic material to kind of finish the concrete. Hence why I have a weird ringing in my ears, but also bioslosh. What is this? Ooh, it's warm. You can see there's some peanut shells, because what this actually is largely manure. Not really. It's unfinished compost. I keep a large container of dirt in my kitchen, which I throw vegetable waste into. It also contains a bag of topsoil and all the used coffee I drink. So basically, it's a giant, rotting, fermenting mash of dirt. It's surprisingly effective at decaying paper. I can throw in paper shreds from all my shredded mail, and they disintegrate within like 2 weeks. I have filled it up with water, and I'm going to dip this in it to absorb that water and hopefully maintain its stability, but also to kind of regulate the pH. And that concrete is very alkaline. I want it to slightly acidify, to slightly basically form a film of biomaterial and carbon on the surface, so it's not just crumbly concrete. I figure if I'm going to make a fountain, I might as well make the fountain potentially habitable by microorganisms and slime. So this is all one big piece now, functionally. I'm just gonna stick it in there. Now, since this is especially absorbent concrete, that's the smell. You can hear it losing gas, but it's going to absorb all the various liquids into its cells and hopefully undergo some interesting chemical reactions. That's part of an onion. Okay, that might explain the smell. So that's going to sit there for about a week, and we'll see what it looks like when it comes out. Or maybe it'll just completely dissolve, I don't know. The odor is quite odoriferous. I've let it sit in this container for a week. What have I let sit? I don't remember, but probably something interesting considering how much mold there is on the surface. Like poo and a hint of acidity, because I had to add vinegar.
Because one night I was brushing my teeth and thought, oh, hey, that's moldy. Stuck my hand in there, pulled it out, it was all slippery. What's slippery? That's base, dissolving the flesh of your skin, turning your lipids into soap. So I figured, that's not correct. Let me add some acid. So now it smells interesting. Fortunately, my immune system is pretty durable. So this would normally be bad for a human, but it's slightly hairy. Hairier than I expected. That's a chunk of concrete. It's black. It doesn't smell as bad as it looks, but it has darkened in color substantially, and I think that this hydrogel is probably biodegradable, because that's what I think got moldy at all. Floated to the top and got mold. So it may have fallen apart a little, just because the glue is undergoing some molecular changes. No cuts on my hands? A few. It's fine. Ooh. Ooh, there's stuff in there that's not concrete. Ooh. A little bit sloppy. That's fine. I hope. It's not a nice smell. It's not the worst. It's like bobbing for the worst apples. That's what the dirt looks like now. That don't smell nice. That's anaerobic decomposition. This stuff's toxic. Lots of peanut shells. I ate so many peanuts. And I will continue to, weirdly foamy. I'm going to rinse my hands off. That's the bacteria working. My microbiome has been enhanced with anaerobic decomposition. Soon I'll be able to produce my own hydrogen sulfide. I actually can do that, but not through my skin. So, it has developed brown, which it was buried in dirt. So, it's kind of expected. Some of the pieces have kind of broken off. This was a larger piece. Interestingly, the hairs of the hot glue, which made hair, basically. So the concrete itself appears to have taken on a distinctly brown shade. Interestingly, it has blackened on the back, which is probably the result of hydrogen sulfide exposure. Concrete is very corrodable by hydrogen sulfide. I'll probably save that for something else, because it's fine the way it is right now. Well, it's already producing humidity, very smelly humidity. I'm squinting because these lights are so bright. Oh, why is that squishy? Well, I guess it doesn't matter that much. I'm going to rinse it off and see if I can get some of the extra dirt off and see what it looks like underneath. Assuming it doesn't... Oh, that is squishy. Oh, very squishy. Enjoyably so, even. Surprising feature, the glue is in fact not durable under these conditions. It's fallen apart. The whole thing is just stripping itself. So what I'm going to do is take all the glue apart. Clearly that didn't work. And I'm going to try something different as I assemble it into something better. So glue didn't hold. Glue didn't hold it together. The glue all fell apart, which is kind of expected. The concrete is formerly covered in a powdery dust stuff. Now it's covered in gooey biofilm dirt, kind of, maybe. So, actually, you can smell, it's still alkaline. It smells alkaline, like that. I don't know how to describe to you what fresh alkaline concrete smells like, but if you know, you know. I put a pump in it. There's an electric pump in the middle there. It does spray a lot of water, so I covered it. It's held by gravity, not by glue. It's just fountaining in there, blowing water. There's a little river on the side. Pretty cool. I mean, a fountain. It's a fountain. And you know what I'm going to do over time, once it cures, once this water is not gross, blinging water, you can't see it because the camera doesn't have the resolution, I can start to put some moss here or there onto this wet concrete, and this will become a humidifier of, I guess I'll be breathing this stuff, which is fine, actually. Clean water in a dehumidifier is far more dangerous. If you happen to know what Potomac fever or Legionnaire's disease is, caused by Legionella. It's a bacteria that lives in clean water. Clean water. Doesn't live in this. This is something else. It's stink water. And I also only used half of it, the chunks, so I can use the other chunks for other things. I feel a Winogradski column coming on in the near future, so some of these may be helpful for that. Otherwise, I failed this thing like 3 times, and look how pretty it ended up. I'm quite pleased with myself.